Hello everybody, my name is Lakita Long and we are live with Lakita. And today on our show, we are talking about the silent scream of molestation. It's the ever-gnawing discomfort that sets in one's belly and roams throughout their mind, endlessly causing them to feel a little bit disconnected and for some, just totally out of sorts. We are hoping today that you would come to grips with what you might have buried, which most people do. And let me tell you why you can't afford to. The statistic says that 3 out of 4 women in any room or setting have been sexually assaulted in some way. And just our studio alone, with the women that we have that's working the magic in here, we proved that to be true. Out of the 5 women that were in here, 4 out of the 5 also attributed to sexual assault. So that is serious business. And yet, I'm not so sure people are taking the time to deal with the seriousness of it. Stay tuned as we take a real serious look at the silent scream of molestation. My name is Lakita and we are live with Lakita. Listen, I hope that you have been following our show and our episodes because they are getting more and more juicier by the day. Although the topic that we're going to talk about, while it's juicy, it's kind of really interesting. And we're hoping that we take the discomfort of the interesting off and bring in the introspection of learning and healing and helping. So today we're going to talk about the silent scream of molestation. Molestation is something that has gone on for years and eons. When I say it's gone on for years and eons, I mean for years and eons. But here's the thing about molestation that you should know. It's the act of pestering and harassing someone aggressively in a persistent manner. And it usually ends up being some type of assault against a woman or a child. And today, to kind of help us get perspective about the silent scream of molestation, we have a wonderful guest who's going to talk to us about the silent scream that she dealt with and lived with for a very long time before she found her healing place to be able to speak well. So please welcome my guest, Miss Lytonya Green. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Dr.
Yes,
for having me.
You are very, very welcome. So let's just go right into it, Lytonya. Give us some context. Talk to us a little bit about that little girl, Lytonya, so people can have an understanding.
Absolutely. So I experienced my first episode of molestation at the age of 6. I was raised with only my mother, and my biological brother was actually raised with our father. So at the age of 6, he came to visit, and the molestation was actually just touching at that point. For a consequence, he was returned back to our father, which lived in Chicago, and we moved on. So there was really no resolution. The family kind of swept it under the rug and we moved on. At the age of 12, he returned. He actually came to live with us at that point. And he's 4 years older than me. So I was 12 and he was 16. He came to live with us. And at that point, he began to physically, sexually assault me. It pushed me to a place where I began to try to find ways to escape. So I would kind of hang out a lot, and my family thought I was promiscuous and would talk about me and call me fast and things like that.
With no knowledge that you were just trying to protect yourself
Absolutely.
from the predator that now has moved inside of the house.
Home. Absolutely.
So what do you do with that? Okay, keep going.
Yeah, so it was ongoing for several months, and it wasn't until I was confronted with the name calling, and I had kind of gotten sick and tired of, you're fast, you're all of these things. And so I just had an outbreak with my mom. And I said, the reason why I'm not here is because of this. Your son, this is what he's doing to me. She didn't believe me. And so she took me to get a medical checkout. And the hospital did a rape kit and had, in fact, confirmed that I had been violated. And the state pursued charges against that person. But had that not happened, I don't think I would probably have had an opportunity to actually release that information to her and get, any type of closure to that situation.
So let's talk for a second. I mean, the silence started at age 6.
Absolutely.
So we've got this gap between 6 and 12.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got 6 years of not being able to do, and those are adolescent years. Those are years where you're starting to formulate your thoughts and you're kind of having your own mindset about certain things. And so, during that time, now you're vacillating in your thought process. And then he comes back when you're 12 to live with you. So at that juncture, and you should know something, 1 in 9 girls under the age of 18 are sexually assaulted in the United States of America. And it's really, and 1 in 53 boys, okay, because we're not gonna leave our young men out. That's a whole nother conversation. The young men are violated, and they're not violated necessarily by men. A lot of men have been violated by women when they were children, and that's a whole nother conversation. But let's talk for a second. Mom didn't believe you. Now he's prosecuted. 12 years of age, he's 16, he goes away. So he is prosecuted and goes to jail. What are you thinking about at this point? What's your relationship with Mom?
So I really felt betrayed. I felt ostracized in a lot of ways. I felt trapped within myself. I felt really in a space where I felt like I was helpless. Because during the process of him being prosecuted and going through his legal process, my mom was still supporting him. She was still attending court hearings. She was still visiting him. And during those times, actually was a gift and a curse for me because I was sent away to a family member that lived in Hayward, California. And that was where I actually was introduced to church because that wasn't something that was practiced in my home. So she would send me away and go visit him. So then there was a sense of betrayal and distrust that built up because that's my mother. But I guess she was, straddling a fence for herself because it's 2 of her children. So it was a rough time period. I really went inward and really started to, at that point, experience a lot of self-abuse and things like that.
I was going to ask because one of the signs and symptoms short term in terms of those who have been molested is that they become victims and the victimization increases or there's an increased risk for victimization. Along with PTSD, did you find that you had any PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder? It's an ongoing occurring sort of feeling like you're back in the scene of the thing that you just experienced. Did you experience any of that? And if you did, what was that like? I mean, you had your mother that didn't believe you, and that's huge. And let me just put a cultural plug right here. Black people, we have got to quit disarming and disregarding and dismissing when our children are coming to us about anything, whether it's about a boyfriend, about a pastor, about your favorite elder, or whomever. If they say it, investigate it. You cause great hurt and damage when you just ignore it. And some things could have been repaired early on. But go ahead and share this whole aspect of PTSD. Or did you go through depression, which is short-term effects as well?
Yeah, I actually did have a lot of self-hatred that built up. I did become promiscuous. And the reason that I think that happened is because that's what was expected of me anyway. That was the expectation of the people around me. I started having relationships with much older men and actually got the victimization piece definitely. I was actually molested by 2 other relatives, 2 uncles and a family friend. Because of what happened there. Yes. And they actually said to me, I know you're already experienced, so. And so that was their reason. And I didn't feel like, I mean, my mother didn't believe me with the first experience, so I really didn't feel like I had a recourse to be able to go to her and disclose this. So I held that in for years. I got into relationships that were damaging and abusive. I've experienced domestic violence to the point to where I've been hospitalized. I got married very young at the age of 21 and experienced a spouse that actually put me in a prostitution situation. I experienced a lot of tumultuous situations that I don't think I would have encountered had that not been
in the
yes.
beginning. And it's very interesting that you say this, because let me share something with you that the aspects of short-term effects about molestation is the sexual dissatisfaction. She didn't have that, but the promiscuity, that something she did. They said homosexuality can also be a short-term effect, but the increased role and destination for victimization, as well as depression and suicidality or suicidal ideation. Now, what I think is very interesting to figure out is that most predators, most people that do get people to be molested and all that kind of stuff, they kind of groom them because they kind of see. And they're emotionally and sexually immature. They have great sexual anxiety. There's a hormonal imbalance. These are some of the things that they've said that they've studied over a period of time, looking at those who perpetrate and do the work, and or unresolved conflicts or child pornography. And they've been exposed. They found out that more than 65% of those who molested had been exposed to child pornography. And I can see how all that can happen. But here's the major issue. That infraction that happened to her, or that incident that happened to her, it created other stuff for your life. Like the choices. So let me ask you, did you feel like you had the power to say no?
I didn't feel like I had the power to say no. And I also had a very low self-worth. My worth was equated to what somebody wanted from me for many years. So if somebody approached me, and a lot of my worth was revolved around money. So even in relationships, I would get into relationships. My son's father, actually, I got with him at 15 during the process of this molestation and the trial and everything. He was a drug dealer. He had money. I was young. He was 18 and I was 15. And so I put myself in very, very dangerous situations, being exposed to things that could have cost me my life, as well as I could have wound up going to jail for many years, because I just wanted to find a place where I was accepted. I just wanted to find a place where I was loved, and I wanted to feel like I was making that person happy. So I didn't feel like any of my life was ever about me for that period of time. It was more so about pleasing them, and I didn't feel like I had a choice. If that was what they wanted from me, whether it be sex, me to hold drugs or drive a car in a situation that I shouldn't be. I knew better. I was always an intelligent, gifted and talented programs growing up. So I had the intelligence to be able to do it, but emotionally I wasn't there.
And I think it's really, really important. So before you start blaming some of the young ladies that are being the victims of molestation, they may have the smarts, they may be straight A's, but emotionally, and if her growth stunted at the age of 6, the moment that she got violated. So she then went on, and then here it is again at 12 years old. So now emotionally, physically, psychologically, she's at that 12-year mark, right? And so she's gone on, but she's not really. So she's fighting to just get back the innocence of who she is. And I'm sharing this information because maybe somebody in your family is dealing with molestation and they have a silent scream, like a scream you can't hear. Oh! You could see me moving, but you couldn't hear me. Yeah. And so many people move like that in the world. So many. And we just want you to be a little bit more cognitive when you see a young lady that you think something about them. And speaking of the way we think, I wanted to sort of dive into this. And this is a little bit, touchy, because you now are a mother and you have girls. Mm-hmm. So what's your thought process about that?
So, up until very recently, I'd say within the last 6 months to a year, I've struggled. My daughter's 12 years old, and I have an 11-year-old daughter, and a 9-year-old daughter, and a 5-year-old daughter. And I noticed that when my 12-year-old was born, a lot of what I went through resurfaced. Because prior to that, I also have a son who's 24 years old, but it was a boy. But when I had a girl, my outlook towards men and people around and people that that my kids had contact with was very guarded, very untrusting and suspect of everything. I'm always talking to my girls about my experiences and what I went through. And even though they're very young, I've really went into detail about some of the things that I've experienced because I've been fearful for them. That they would ever get into a situation and didn't feel like they could trust me. And I wanted them to understand what's acceptable and what's not. And I never wanted them to feel alone like I did. So it's been hard being a mother of a girl because I sometimes see myself in them. And sometimes I can see them in me. When I was 6, I have a 5-year-old. She's almost 6. My daughters have went through the ages and stages of the things that I've experienced, and I want to just. Sometimes I feel like, okay, this is when it happened. Make sure I'm watching. And so it's really been emotionally, it's caused me to overcompensate for a lot of protecting them in ways that, stifled both of us because some things they may have missed out on because I was a lot overbearing.
And listen, I before we close out, I need for the people to know where you are and what has happened. I mean, you've had some amazing breakthroughs and some amazing healings. And I think that this part of our segment is really important about the amazing healing. Recently, you just did something that really freed your soul. And when we talk about the silent scream, you let the scream out. And I want you to tell the audience what you did to do that.
So through some mirror work, which is actually work within, spiritual work within, going through processing the events and the things that I've experienced, and then also digging into and getting closer to my spiritual side, reaching into my relationship with God, I was able to, and with the assistance of Dr. Lakita and the program that you've created, the LDL Empowerment Group, some of the classes that I've taken have opened up my mind to be able to deal with that problem and that pain so that I can release it. I've always felt like I was over it, but going through this time period of my life, I've realized how it's constricted me in so many ways. And so what I did was I wrote a letter to my offender, who is my brother. And it's interesting because many times I've unfriended him. He found me on Facebook. He doesn't live in California. And I've unfriended him several times. And somehow he's back in my friends list. And so I know that when you unfriend and unfollow that and block, somebody's not supposed to be able to even see your page. But for some reason, he kept still being there. And I think it was God giving me an opportunity to really just release this situation. And so I was able to write him a letter and send it to him on Facebook through Messenger to let him know how his behavior affected me. And not only how it affected me, but how it affected my life as I grew, and also how it affected my children. And I was able to tell him that I did forgive him and set a boundary to let him know that even though I forgave you, I have the choice that I'm choosing, that I don't feel like it's healthy for me to have you as a part of my life actively. And so it felt good to be able to actually say that to him. And even though he's still on my Facebook friends list, we don't interact. But it was liberating to be able to explain to him how what he did caused me to have so many setbacks in my life, and where I could have possibly been had that not happened. And he did apologize and actually shared with me that in his youth he was victimized as well. That did In some ways, that did give me some clarity as to what he did, but I still know that for me, that is a place that I'm not willing to take myself, and I know that I won't be able to really trust him in a way that he could be a part of my children's lives because they're girls.
Listen, I think, and that was one of the other aspects that they had pinpointed regarding those who molest, is that they are victims themselves. I have worked with both of them, having been a counselor and a therapist, and I've worked both in the jails and the prisons as well, and it's very, very alarming. I've worked with more than 1,500 inmates at a particular prison in Northern California, and one of the things that came to find out is that a lot of these men were victimized by women, an aunt, and it switches your brain because you know that it's wrong even if it's a different sex. You just know it. It's just not supposed to be. So I just want to encourage each and every last one of you that have heard Lytonya's story that maybe it's time for you to get a healing in your spirit and in your heart and your mind, and you don't have to go around being silent anymore. So I am just so excited that if you are out there and you need to get some healing or some help in that area, I pray that you know that you do not have to continue with the silent screams. There's healing made available for us all, but you've got to open up your mouth. And in the case that you feel like you don't know where to turn, there are many different places, but feel comforted to reach out to us. And there's some information on the screen that will allow you to reach out to one of the centers that we are connected to, Inspiring You Counseling Center. And you can be able to reach out to someone in a confidential way that can be able to help you get through some of the screaming that you've been doing in silence. We pray that this has been a blessing. Absolutely. I'm your host, Lakita Long, and thank you so much, Lytonya, for being with us. And that is what we got for you for Live with Lakita. Much love, and God bless.
While molestation is an act that attributes to sexual assault, the statistics are very alarming and we should pay attention to it. Here are some of the facts. Every 73 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted. Every 9 minutes, that sexually assaulted victim is a child. 9 out of every 10 victims of rape are female. 55% of the sexual assaults happen at the victim's home. 15% of the sexual assaults happen at a public place. 1 in 4 girls will be sexually abused before they are 18. And 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused before they are 18. RAIN, Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, is the nation's largest anti-sexual violence organization. RAIN created and operates the National Sexual Assault Hotline. That number is 1-800-656-HOPE. Sexual abuse leaves a lasting image in the mind of the victim and often cripples them from exploring life to the fullest. If you or someone you know may have been sexually assaulted or abused, please reach out to someone to get help.
Hey everybody, we are so excited that you were able to watch our episode, Silent Screams of Molestation. We hope and pray that it was a blessing, that it was informational and empowering, that you might have learned something else. But we want you to stay tuned for our next episode where we talk about the stress that kills us. Do you know that stress can take us out of here? Stay tuned for the next Live with Lakita, and we surely will be glad that you're with us.
Mankind won't be destroyed. The fact that you and I are working here today is evidence of that.
To join the LDL Empowerment Group, please visit us at ldlempowermentgroup.com.